Every successful organization begins with its people. At Incredible Workplaces, we help you build workplaces that inspire, engage, and endure. Recognition starts with certification. Our globally benchmarked evaluation celebrates organizations that foster engagement, inclusivity, and innovation. Certification is more than a badge. It's proof that your culture empowers people to excel. Through consulting, we partner with organizations to transform cultures, strengthen leadership, and build workplaces that adapt, innovate, and thrive. Your story deserves to be heard. With our employer branding solutions, we showcase your culture through featured videos, exclusive events, and media spotlights, ensuring you attract and retain top talent with pride. From recognition to transformation and employer branding, our services create workplaces that inspire people and elevate businesses. Are you ready to transform your workplace into a beacon of excellence? Partner with Incredible Workplaces today.
Thanks a lot, Incredible Workplace, for this recognition. Thank you.
Proud to be Incredible Workplaces.
I'm proud to share that MB Informatics has been certified as an incredible workplace.
Feeling proud to be recognized as Incredible Workplace Certified.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the episode 19th of Culture Connect, where we bring you the global leaders across the world and talk about topics that are connected with work culture and the space where people engage with each other. Today, we have a very interesting topic because in many conversations in the past, we have spoken about the impact of artificial intelligence on work culture. But today, we are going to go a little bit deep into it, and the topic is navigating the human side of AI, thriving amid transformation and uncertainty. This is a topic that we have for today, and we have two amazing leaders from the globe to have conversation. And I'm sure one that you already know, and I know that you have heard a lot. So Scott, first of all, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Govind, for having us.
And welcome Martin to the show as well.
Thank you.
And I think Martin doesn't know, but when I and Scott were on the 101 Culture Connect Live, at the end, we discussed about having this conversation one more time. Why? Because it was so interesting, and we felt that 45 minutes have gone like this. And second, Scott was like, why don't we also bring Martin on the show, who's also a co-founder? It will be a great conversation. And on that show, I and Scott agreed that we're going to have another round of this conversation with you, Martin. So just to let you know that, that the background...
That was the genesis.
Yes. We had a great conversation, but I was like, there's more to dig into here. So
right.
All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, Scott Varro with us is the founder and principal consultant for Olo, and we also have Martin Wilson, who is the principal and co-founder for Olo. So, once again, both of you, welcome to the show. And this is a great topic. I always love talking about artificial intelligence. And you know why, Scott? Because the last time we spoke, and now this time, there's so many things have changed. I'm sure the shares have gone down for NVIDIA and many other. When we spoke last time, it was going very high. So maybe the same questions will have very different answers at this point in time. But before we start the conversation, I will start with you, Scott, and then I'll go to Martin on what's the purpose behind Olo, why you both have built this organization.
Well, and I think this is incredibly pertinent to the topic. So Martin and I are both product development leaders. We've led engineering, product, design for a number of organizations in a number of contexts, but mostly B2B SaaS, and for Martin, a little bit of also consulting. And so we both have a really strong viewpoint on what modern product development should be like. And Govind, you know me, I like to create systems where people can thrive and really grow, learn, and have incredible impact. And so that's always been kind of my mission, is to create that context under which people can do that. And Martin shares that passion. Like, how do we create better product development context But of course, with the pressure and pace of AI, that question of how to create a really positive and thriving environment for the humans and for the company, because it has to serve both, is a really tricky question. And so what we're doing now is helping leaders both modernize, but also deal with the pressure of AI in effective ways. So incredibly pertinent to what we want to discuss today. How do you navigate that? How do you create alignment between the top of the organization, the investors who have a lot at stake, and the frontline employees who also feel like they have a lot at stake and are somewhat threatened by it? And how do we navigate that? How do middle leaders, CTOs, CPOs, directors of engineering, VPs, how do they navigate that effectively so that people are both challenged? This is a challenging environment. Let's not sugarcoat it, but also supported. And so that's our purpose, is to help leaders figure that out. And we'll talk more about that, I'm sure.
Awesome. Martin, what do you have to say?
Well, I think Scott said it pretty well. I think why Scott and I came together on this is fundamentally the business outcomes and the challenges, they haven't changed. But when you add AI into the mix to something that's already pretty opaque and hard for boards and CEOs and executives outside of like a CTO, CPO to understand, it adds, we think at times, a pretty toxic mix, and the ways of driving predictability or program management, that pressure that comes in on top of these teams, which fundamentally we know isn't what product is about. It's not what software development is about. There's actually not a lot of predictability. In fact, it's sometimes kind of holding chaos and managing that as best as you can. There's a lot of anti-patterns that exist right now, and we're trying to help leaders navigate this in a way that you can still leverage the power of AI with your people, but get what's still special about product, which is product needs to be a source of competitive advantage in their businesses. So that's a big reason of why Scott and I are working on this, because we feel like there's a unique time in history right now that we just haven't seen this amount of pressure on teams.
Awesome. Thank you, both of you. I'll start with the same question, Scott, that I started, the one that we had together. So now the AI, and we spoke about it, that the problem is the AI is changing so fast that people are finding it very hard to cope up with that. And I think the episode with you is almost 2.5 or 2 months back. What do you think now? What is happening? You guys interact with all kind of stakeholders. Is it investor? These are CXOs, also employees who are getting impacted, people who are supposed to implement those AI projects. What are you seeing right now? Maybe the question is, do you think investors still have faith on AI-driven projects and the impact it can create? What do you think from a CEO lens? What does employee think at this point in time? Is there any change from our last Culture Connect talk till now, or is it the same? What do you think?
I mean, I think a lot of the fundamentals are the same, right? The pace is so great that the uncertainty about when the music stops, and it's not going to stop, but when the music starts to get to a more tractable level, the level of change is easier to digest. What's it going to look like? What are we as a community of product development leaders going to norm on as the new normal, and we don't know that. None of us know that. And certainly Martin and I, we make sure that we're clear that we don't know that either. Like, even given all the amount of time that we spend on this topic, and the amount of experience we have going back, we don't know what the future looks like. However, we do know that there are certain principles that tend to work through periods of uncertainty. And one of the things that, and one of our mantras is that AI has created a human problem. Like, yes, there's a technology component, but the real challenge is in the humans. And that's up and down the line, right? Like, a lot of the talk in public is about jobs and the frontline people. But the fact is that investors, who are getting the same hype cycle as everyone else, have inflated expectations. I've had CFOs tell me I should be getting 400% throughput. It's like, no one's been able to achieve that. So where did you get that number? And it's just like, well, I just believe it because it seems like it's magical and we should be able to do this stuff way faster. And I'm like, but there's no evidence for this at all. So within that emotional crucible, it creates a lot of pressure. And so that was true then, and that is true now as well. Like those expectations haven't, I mean, some of the things that have been published have caused people to question whether or not AI investments, direct AI investments, rather than investing in, let's say, instrumenting the process, which is a little bit different approach, right? Whether or not those make sense, because there's been a lot of reported failures of AI investments. But the fact is that they still believe there's a magic wand here that can produce a ton of value. And so how do we help people navigate that expectation and ground that in a reality that leaders and employees can actually achieve? And also then for investors, right size the investment. I mean, that's really the nexus point. So the one thing that has changed that's really interesting and more tangibly on the technology side is Martin and I are systems thinkers. We tend to think in terms of how do you create a better ecosystem? And right now, the predominant model is how do I give my frontline employees tools that will accelerate their tasks? But that task level focus actually undermines a systems level focus, an ecosystem level focus. And so our guidance is that this will flip. There will be a time when instead of just giving individuals tools like kind of like sidecars to help them do their tasks, we're going to see a shift towards an ecosystem that produces better results as a unit, because product development is a team sport. And so having an ecosystem that's integrated, that where things like quality are agreed upon and normed, those are going to outperform this individual model. So that's the one addition, is starting to see some of those frameworks come out. There's only a handful of them now that are looking at ecosystem-wide change, but most companies are still doing how do I give every employee a license to an AI tool to do their tasks faster? So,
yeah, Martin, what do you have to say? What do you see right now?
Well, yeah, there's so much to unpack here. Yeah, I agree with everything Scott says. What I'll share is a story. So about 12 years ago, I was working in IBM Research Lab, working on AI, and we were presenting kind of the future of AI. And we talked about this future product that would be able to read your calendar and recommend things to you, recommend flights. Oh, you're going to this direction. Well, here's the flights, here's the prices, like all kinds of things AI can just knock out of the park there. And we were met with an incredible amount of skepticism, and rightfully so. This was 12 years ago, but the seeds were there. You could see a lot of this stuff. We just didn't know when. And now I think what shifted is people are not skeptical of AI. They directly experience AI in ways that are really magical. But then they conflate the magic that they can see or they hear about into all these other arenas, because it does feel sometimes like magic. And so like an example is someone uses TikTok to create a great video. They then can't go create a blockbuster movie. That's sometimes what it feels like. Like we've talked to another CEO who was like, why can't we just like rebuild our whole application from the ground up? Like all these people are vibe coding things. Why can't we just do it? And it's like, yes.
Over a weekend.
Great question. Right. Like, let's talk about that. And so there are pockets where AI is doing great stuff right now. Vibe coding things, creating rapid prototypes, pattern recognition. I mean, there's phenomenal ways AI is really useful. And then there's also a lot of ways where it's just horrible. Like you take a big legacy code base, you can't just feed it to AI and be like, let's just move this to the newest
modern tech stack.
Yeah, to a modern tech stack and migrate it all over. No. So I agree with Scott, like things are shifting, but reality feels very fungible around this because AI does feel very, very magical at times. And I think one of the things we try and do here when we work with clients, especially at the CTO, CPO level, is how do you bring reality into this? How do you bring a systems approach where you say, we don't know, but we're going to try these three things, and we're going to, whatever one works, and here's how we're going to measure it, we're going to use that to drive productivity, to drive value, rather than magical thinking of what we can do.
Yeah, great. And I think to me also it looks very magical, because I also sometimes feel that AI can do many things, but I'm sure you guys are the experts, and it's right that it's not that AI can do every single thing. And Scott, I also do see that when you're speaking, and I was trying to see myself, and I do actually look at the task level AI implementation, right? Well, I have to do, I don't know, email marketing or video creations or certain things. And I was like, how AI can help here? But I have never seen it from a complete ecosystem driven by AI. And I was thinking about it. I think maybe it's correct, because even when automation came, right, technology started, right? Like I was in HR, as you know, that we used to see payroll differently, income tax differently, performance management differently, and L&D differently. And suddenly one day, like, okay, now you have mastered each tool, and you know what that tool looks like, and you kind of get a sense of it, and you have inculcated in your process. Now let's have a complete ecosystem. Maybe, I don't know, one HRMS software coming with everything together. So I do see that there will be a time when AI ecosystem will be there, and maybe today we are talking about AI doing very basic operational routine repeated work, and it might start doing a little bit of intelligent, which it can, but I think people will start having faith on AI to do that intelligent work.
Yeah.
So,
and Govind, if I can just offer one other thing, because I think our audience will recognize this too. The other thing that's shifted, because we talk about AI as a monolith, as a single set of technologies, but it's actually multiple classes of technology. And so that I think is confusing the conversation as well. We're now talking about agentic systems, which is very different from just a plugin to your IDE and how you code, right? So that shift has also taken place. We've seen it. There's a whole new class of AI technologies, I think, since we talked, that's really taken off, and that's the agentic models. And so I think that's probably the one. It's important to recognize, first of all, that when we talk about AI, we're talking about different types of technologies, and then there's the newest one is probably one of the most impactful that we've seen, this agentic model.
Yeah, and makes sense, Scott. So first of all, the audience, please feel free to ask your questions. As I promised last time, and I always promise in every episode, is we'll try to take as much as questions we can. And by the way, Martin, I never used to fulfill my promise, because I never used to take all the questions, because so many questions are there. And then I always request my speakers to go to offline recording of the LinkedIn and just try to answer as much as comments they can. So yeah, audience, feel free to ask your questions. I love to take it from both Scott and Martin while on the show. We spoke about technology part of artificial intelligence, and now I think let's shift a little bit towards the human side of it. And at Incredible Workplaces, we do work with organizations. Martin, this is for you. Scott, I'm sure is very much aware that we work with organizations to work on their work cultures. And one thing we are hearing, Martin, a lot is about the impact of artificial intelligence on work culture. And I think certain thing Scott has touched upon was the frontline workers and the pressure they have on whether their jobs will be there or not. But earlier we also spoke about upskilling, right? Well, how do I upskill myself to make sure that my job stays, or I am able to add value, or at least stay with what's going on in artificial intelligence? So these many things are also part of the human side of it. Now, I'm sure when you guys are working with organizations and different kind of stakeholders in the organizations and implementing and doing the AI rollouts, there are a lot of emotional barriers that you guys see. And those emotional barriers, such as it is about your job displacement and anxiety and cognitive overload of the work. So I think that kind of emotional stress, that when it comes, and I could echo what you just said, that sometimes it is not only a technology shift for people, but also a shift in terms of how they're gonna consider AI in their ecosystem. What do you think? What are those, and how can leaders identify those hidden emotional stresses? What do you guys have to say on that?
So let me make sure you covered some wide ground there, but you're saying in this moment where there's just a lot of going on with AI, it's coming in all directions. What we talked about 2 months ago is different than we talked about today. How do, as leaders, when we're thinking about rolling out AI or using AI, how do we understand what's going on in people's heads, right? How do we identify and address those hidden emotional barriers? That's what this is.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Okay.
bang on.
I mean, I think the thing that we need to realize is it is easy to underestimate that hidden fear around AI, and this is really the first time we've seen credible job replacement anxiety hit these more traditional kind of tech roles at scale. Like this is potentially a massive disruption. We've seen companies like Amazon and Microsoft fire 10, 15% of their workforce. But these patterns are not unfamiliar, and I think it's helpful for people to realize that. We've seen the same reaction, Scott and I, when we work with tech-enabled service companies where work has been automated that used to be manual and human-heavy for decades. Where I do think, though, that there is a difference here, which is in a lot of those industries, they are very focused on cost rather than competitive advantage. So they were using automation to just replace very manual work, where what we believe is happening, at least in the I mean, who knows, right? Next few years, is it's around augmenting human judgment. And then getting rid of those repetitive things. Like I would love to never have my product team have to write manual status updates, right? From an executive wants to know what's going on here. That would be great. So we could actually focus on interviewing customers, understanding what's really going to move the needle in revenue. So there's some pattern recognition, but it is different. So then we get to the type of barriers. There's the concerns that you hear out loud that you definitely need, and then those fears that people avoid mentioning because of psychological safety or their own insecurities or just the tension that exists. I think there's kind of 5 things I would say real quickly to the audience. Like I think the main barriers you'll see are things like job displacement anxiety, which we talked about, cognitive overload, which is real. Like, oh, I have to learn all these new tools. I have to do this delivery. I have to do this. There's also low trust in leadership. Like we've seen memos come out from CEOs saying, if you don't do AI, we're going to fire you. That's probably not a great messaging to have, and it's going to create more anxiety. 4th thing would be just confusion about expectations. How am I supposed to be using AI? How is this going to help me? And then I think there's just that kind of fundamental fear of like not keeping up with the times, not being technical enough, not knowing the depth. And Scott and I spend all day on this stuff, and I'm overwhelmed trying to keep up with even our slice of what we're trying to do. So I think those 5 barriers are all really, really important. But the fundamentals of change management and communication don't change, right? You got to name the fears early so that they lose power and you can discuss them. You got to reduce the noise and simplify the learning path around these. Really important to strengthen leadership and management alignment before the rollout. So messaging, communication is consistent. Give people examples of what good looks like. Like, yes, it's a scary time, but by doing this, you're going to learn how to do this, and that's going to help you in future jobs and your job. And then, of course, recruiting champions to normalize experimentation. The things you don't want to do, and we've got a list of those. I'll let Scott talk about those a little bit, but there's a lot of anti-patterns too that you can do, like forcing people to adopt them by sending a memo to everyone. So.
Yeah. Well, and that's probably the biggest anti-pattern, right? Don't threaten your employees. That's not going to improve your
step one, not a great idea.
Yeah. I don't think employees generally appreciate that. And so and so on the flip side, what should you do? I think exactly as Martin said, I mean, that was a great framing. And I think that like acknowledging the uncertainty and the fear that we have shared uncertainty. We don't know the future. We're all worried about our competitors, right? Like leaders have fears as well that are relevant, right? So
Mhm.
how do we make this a shared struggle instead of, pressure for employees, but doesn't seem like it's pressure for leadership? It's like, no, this is shared pressure, and it's different. It expresses itself differently in the C-suite versus the front line, but we're all facing an uncertain future and some level of overload in terms of what to do right now. And if you can do that, then you can create a shared space to collaborate. Because I've heard people say, should this be top down or bottom up? And I don't believe either can be successful on its own. It has to be both. There has to be engagement. There's dialogue. There's, okay, based on what we learned here, this is what we do next. This is where we're seeing value. This is where we're not seeing value. If you do, let's say, top down, you're bringing your preconceptions of what should happen. And then when that doesn't happen, it creates distrust. Like, is it the people that I have? They're just not executing on what we said we wanted to do. So creating that shared context for us to collaborate, to learn together, and to continue pushing. We want to challenge ourselves to be better at all times. And that's not controversial. It just so happens we have a whole new bag of tools to play with, and we need to figure out how to make them effective in our context so that we build a more valuable company. That's the shared problem. And then you can create forums. You can start to model what vulnerability looks like. Like, hey, I did this with AI. I'm not sure it's the right thing to do. Like, to have a leader say that, like, I tried this task and it went this way. Here's my prompt. What do you all think? Right? Like, to put that stuff out there so that there's increased collaboration. We're on a whole new mastery curve with these tools, and all of us are navigating ChatGPT on our own. And it's like, no, like, let's share. Let's create context where we can share and improve, or even have somebody say, like, oh, you shouldn't have put that information in your prompt. Because that's the other part of this, right? There's real fear on the part of legal and risk management. Like, what if we're putting private information in prompts? And it's like, that danger does exist. But what's private information? What's actually IP? Let's start having those conversations. So again, we can get better at using these tools to create value and manage risk together. I really believe that's the formula: is make this a shared struggle, not a you better do this or else. I have never seen any really great innovation come out of that kind of context.
I think both of you spoke about the mistrust and the low trust, especially when the CEOs are forcing AI implementations on their employees. I think that's where communication come as a strong element to it. And we have a question from audience Scott and Martin on communication. And the question is, how can leaders communicate AI-driven changes in the way that reduce uncertainty rather than increase it? And I think you had kind of touched upon a little bit on that, but would you like to take it?
You did, yeah.
I think the first thing is addressing the uncertainty head on and just say, we all have it. And I think that's the absolute first step is validate the feelings of all the people involved. There's some level of uncertainty for everybody. And also in every department. We tend to focus on product development teams specifically, but it's not just product development that's affected by AI for sure. But you, like Martin said, you name it, so you can address it head on and honestly, and then create structures for and modeling the vulnerability. I think those are the really big things for AI to make this a shared struggle. The other element that I didn't talk about though, and I think this is really important, is how does this organization plan on getting a return on investment from AI? And this is something Martin and I talk a lot about. If investors are left alone to guess what the ROI is, they're gonna probably index on staff reduction because that's the most obvious ROI. But every company I've ever worked for would prefer to have a more valuable company rather than one that in other words, growth rather than, saving costs. Growth is more important. And so instead of, for CTOs, the advice that we give is put a value proposition in front of your investors and your C-suite that is not tied to staff reduction. And so an example of this, if you're dealing with a lot of tech debt or your security standards aren't up to snuff, or, there's a bunch of different ways we can leverage AI, but tie the ROI, the hypothesis of return on investment to something that the business cares about, a business outcome, something where your product development lifecycle is affecting the business in some way, and you'd like to apply AI there and get return on investment. If you can then, if you win buy-in at the C-suite, now you can take that to the front line and say, this is how we're planning to win. And they may believe you, they may not. You need to acknowledge that humans get to believe whatever they want to believe. We can't tell them what to believe. But if it's credible, you have a lot more opportunity to win and retain trust through an uncertain time.
Perfect. Makes sense. And I know that we are going close to the almost 15 minutes left. So I'll take quick questions because Martin, I'm trying to fulfill my promise as I couldn't ever take all the questions. Let's see if we can break the record.
This is why I like working with Scott, though. I thought that was an excellent answer. Good job, Scott.
Thanks.
I'll take another one, Martin. This one is from Viva. She's the Vice President of People and Culture in Incredible Workplace. And we get this kind of thing a lot right now, Martin, while we are working with CEOs of the companies on their work culture. So basically the question is, what ethical consideration should leaders focus on when making AI-driven decisions about people and culture? Maybe that's broadly the question is all about. Well, maybe let me ask you a prep question before. I think AI will have an impact on culture. This is the biggest one that we face. Like, do you think there's an impact of AI on culture? What do you think? Maybe then I'll go to Scott as well.
Yeah, I mean, of course it does. So there's the expectation side of it. And Scott touched on this, that what do we believe as a company AI should do for us? And if it's something like we believe we should be able to automate a large part of our workforce, that is going to have an impact on your culture. And that's a valid business move, right? We've seen that happen over time as productivity increases. AI tools can do that, or it's going to allow us to compete better. And that's kind of our primary way of looking at it. But it is important that leaders understand and have clarity of where they're going to deploy and AI, how to use it. Scott also talked about the principles, right? What actions you take and the metrics you use to move them. Can I talk about the ethical side of it?
Yes, please.
Yeah. So I think this is a tough answer, because is it ethical to, as a steward of the business, try and get the most out of your people, your systems, so that you can get very high ROI and return investment to your current employees, your future employees? Like, big companies are not grown by being timid. So I think ethics right now, you see some conversations about ethics, and there's some real fears around being replaced by robots and taking out decision making. I think the ethical considerations need to balance the reality of competing in a fast changing world, and then the ethical considerations of we still need to respect people, to value what people bring to these equations. That's where I think that tension needs to be managed. And I think the ethical consideration here is that's the role of the board, the CEO, and the executives. They need to understand that and make tough decisions and not push that tension down. I think that's the thing I think about ethical considerations in this moment is, don't push it down into your people to navigate this time. It is your ethical duty to your people and your company to understand and set a guiding course that, you can share with your grandmother, that you feel comfortable talking about. Those are, I think, kind of the ethical considerations we push leaders to make is respect the business, what it can do, respect the people, and then make sure you're resolving the tension at the right level and not pushing it down. Because if you push it down, it's going to create chaos.
Well, and I would add just a wrinkle to that, like because you're absolutely right. Like, you can't offload it to your front line, and which is what Martin means by pushing it down. You have to share it. And so how do you challenge and support? I think that's the ethical piece. And I'll add one other ethical situation that's become fairly common, which is, well, I'm going to tell my board that the ROI is going to be job displacement. We're going to cut costs next year, but I'm going to tell my people that that's not the case, so I can keep them, working hard on this. Right. That's not I mean, I mean, that doesn't even pass the grandmother sniff test that Martin just put out. Like, I'm not going to be proud of that. I'm lying to my people in order to get a financial gain. And unfortunately, like that is definitely possible, right? But here's the thing, your employees suspect that you may cut their job anyways. And so by being more transparent and there's ways to do this that are very that are high integrity, high, ethical, such as, yeah, job displacement is our goal. We are trying to cut our costs through leveraging AI. So how do you help people and incent them to stay through that struggle and help you achieve it? You could offer bonuses for, hey, if your job does get eliminated, I'm telling you now, next year we're going to pay bonuses because we're going to get a long-term recurring ROI and you get a one-time payment. And so that's a fair deal. How do you get a share of our future profitability based on the work that the journey we're asking you to go on? That would be an example of a more ethical approach to, like cost reduction, as Martin said, is a legitimate business move. There's nothing wrong with that from a capitalist perspective, but how do you do it in an ethical way?
At the same time, Scott, I feel that with the bonuses, that there could be a genuine effort that organization can make to seriously upskill those people and see if they can do any other thing in the organization. I think it's a great way to take the buy-in from those people. Thank you very much, both of you, to share your opinion. There is a question on the continuous learning, but I will just put it on hold for a while because I want to ask one question that I want to is what real-world frameworks turn AI anxiety into opportunity for human AI collaboration and innovation? This is open for both of you. Feel free to share.
Martin has championed on this front a framework that we've used quite a bit. So I'll let him start on this one. I was thinking about the crowd, the lab, and the leadership.
Oh yeah. So this is actually what we're dealing with right now with several clients is what we call our AI catalyst. And in its nutshell, it's helping CTOs, CPOs understand what's really going on at a very high level within their PDLC when they're early in the AI tooling journey, right? Where they've done some tinkering or they're doing some stuff internally to use AI tooling, but it's not a part of how they work, right? It's not core that, oh, we have a great narrative of how we use AI within our product development lifecycle. It's those earlier stages, which we're seeing a lot of teams at right now. So we first start with like kind of a quick and dirty, like where are you in your PDLC? What kind of AI usage are you having right now? And then work with their team to understand what kind of experiments should we start running? Where's the most value that is going to drive business outcomes for you that we can start testing with your teams? And then we put in place the right system for that. And that's the kind of the system approach we bring, which really has three elements. It's one, leadership, and then what's your continuous learning lab, and then what's the crowdsourcing you do. And so leadership is at this, let's say, CTO level and above, setting that direction, the guardrails, what does good look like, and getting support that these are experiments and they're going to take some time and energy, right? It's not zero cost for these things. And then you have the crowd, and this is the broader organization. And so they generate ideas, they see things and they try out things in a mainly unstructured way with some guardrails, right? Like, oh, as a QA, I'm gonna build my regression tests with the newest version of Claude and see how those work. Great, let's see, let's try and measure that. Let's see, does it actually move the needle for us? And then you have this continuous learning lab, which is more about the structured side of it. So they can help design experiments, validating what's work, killing what doesn't, and then takes those things that work and then move them out into the team, right? So like, oh, now this is the standard. Here's how you do it. Here's how you upskill to learn it. We're going to give you some training time, some support. But that's part, and there's a question here about continuous learning. What we're trying to enable organizations to do is have some wins with AI tooling, but then have the system in place that's going to allow them to rinse and repeat. because the sands are really shifting right now. This isn't like we're going to do agile transformation and then you're done. No, as an organization, you need to be able to ride these waves that are coming down, because we're at the early stages of AI usage within the PDLC, and no one can predict what's happening. So that's kind of the gist of it. Is like, let's get you some quick wins and give you a system that you can use to continuously improve your business outcomes.
Yeah, and that framework is how we translate how do you challenge your people and support them, right? Like, and that support is not always up down. That's an important element, right? We talked about the leadership and the crowd. That's both of those have a responsibility there, but the crowd is also creating contexts and modeling vulnerability. I don't know how to use this tool to its maximum impact, but I tried this, and now does anybody have advice for me on what I might have missed or not thought about, or that type of support structure, that social support, that we're on a shared journey. You're not alone. I'm sure you've experienced this yourself, Govind. Like, sometimes you do something in let's say a chat GPT, we'll just pick on that one because it's the most known one, but and then you produce something and you're kind of a little bit nervous about saying, I produced this with chat GPT, even though it is actually your work. You reviewed it. Yes, this reflects what you think, and you think this is pretty good. And so it is your work, but you used a tool. And it's like, do I share that? Does it undermine the value of what I produced, or does it enhance it? I don't know. How are people going to perceive it and me? There's a lot of squishiness there. So normalizing that and saying, I get it. Like, I'm living it with you. I think there's a real opportunity to create shared struggle here, and the context within which we can be vulnerable so that we can get better with these tools. And then the lab is such a key piece, because it says, okay, that has high value opportunity for our business. We are going to target and invest in that. And that can be done as, just user stories that anybody takes up to go and invest in that aspect of our PDLC and make it, or it can be something much more structured. Like, I'm going to pull 3 people out of our release and building features to focus on this aspect and make it more standard. Exactly as Martin said, reintegrate that into just the way that we work now. And so that it really is a helpful structure, I think, for organizations to spot opportunities, invest in them, and also make vulnerability and experimentation totally normal.
Yeah, and I like the framework because I think it's very inclusive, especially when you are going for a complete transformation there. I'll take the last question of the day, and I'll pick it from the audience. And I would like to know how your framework that you just described takes care of that. And this is more on the human well-being side. And the question is, how can organization ensure AI supports human well-being instead of causing burnout or disengagement? And maybe you can talk a little bit in the context of your framework, if you want to, how that is going to work out.
Yeah, so I definitely, the framework is helpful because it does bring you into an inclusive shared struggle. And I think that's probably the number one bulwark against the burnout and the disengagement, is like, you're part of this journey with us. And we're all guessing. It's, sometimes some of the best ideas come from children playing with AI, right? And we are like, oh my gosh, I didn't even think you could do that, but I never thought of it. And so, it is, the nice thing about AI is it does create, and it does create an egalitarian opportunity for people to be able to do something that they couldn't do previously, or show or introduce an innovation in an organization in a way that you couldn't without these tools, because nobody really knows what the best patterns are yet. And so the flip side of that, though, and this is really important for us to call out, that can be very threatening for people who are in hierarchies or in roles and in their lane. The fact that, because one of the things that we believe about the future is that roles are going to have to change in product development. The strict lane lines of product and design and engineering and QA, they are already blurring. We're seeing designers create front-end code, front-end engineers creating designs. I've got back-end engineers doing prototypes. Like, what is going on out here, right? Like, it feels like chaos against the place that we're coming from. The teams that are going to thrive in the future are going to be much more fluid in their roles, much more outcome focused, and open to good ideas coming from any part of the organization. And that I think is something for us all to think about in terms of if you're seeking clarity of role, which is something we always talk about as a good thing, I think that blurring is going to feel very threatening, and people are going to struggle to thrive in the what's coming, the world that's coming. I mean, it's not like those won't continue to exist. We still have plenty of organizations that don't even do DevOps, right? So we've got a large spectrum of organizations operating in different ways. So it doesn't mean you're not going to get a job or be employable, but there are going to be contexts where you won't be able to thrive. And so I think the best ones are the ones that are really focused on the mission and less on, but I need my lane. I want to work within my box. I want very strict lane lines. I don't want anybody trying to do my tasks or tell me how to do them. It's like, yeah, like it turns out now doing multiple roles is very accessible because of these tools. They open up new doors. I can create designs as a product manager. I can create prototypes as a backend engineer. These are things that were cut off to us not too long ago.
Martin, do you have to say anything on that?
And I know we're short on time here, so I'll keep this brief. What we encounter a lot in the organizations we work with, which tend to be existing kind of mid-market SaaS or tech-enabled service companies, is there's already enormous pressure on these teams, and there's a lot of burnout, there's disengagement, and shadow AI. Shadow AI is a huge thing right now, as well as Scott mentioned. You don't necessarily want to tell people that you're using AI because your work can be somewhat disqualified. And if you're able to do your job in 6 hours instead of 10, why would you share that information? So there's some real disincentives. So AI won't fix burnout or disengagement if you already have it. That is a culture, a leadership challenge. And so kind of what we are trying to help leaders do is let's have an honest assessment of where your teams are. Tell us where your teams are, where you're having struggles with. And AI is not just the solution. AI, if you're going to deploy AI and use it, which can be fantastic, understand the context in which you're trying to move your team. And you may need to do some foundational work to build up your culture, to really improve your PDLC, to better manage tension and lead with across your executives. So all these things, there's no easy answer here, but it's oftentimes not a let's deploy AI and make sure it doesn't cause burnout or disengagement. Tactically, those symptoms are already there sometimes.
Yeah. And one thing that more tactically and tangibly, I should have mentioned this before, but Martin and I talk about this, is the investment in AI is not, it's not free. It's not zero. So if you want humans to try to do their work in a new way, guess what? They're going to have to slow down before they speed up. It's going to take longer. They may fail. They may try to apply AI to a task and it fails. And then they have to go back to their manual way, which means the original estimate, I'll just make this very tangible for the people who are involved in this process directly. I told you it was going to cost 3 points, but now you asked me to do it with AI, and it took me, a lot longer to do it because I had to do it multiple times, or even AI wasn't able to do it. And so I got impatient and just did it manually my old way, but it obviously ate up a lot more time. And so having a mindset of, first of all, you're going to have to create some flex in the system if you want to change the way work gets done. And so if you held the same expectation and just say leverage AI, and this should, your 3 should be a 1 now, and it's like, well, that was an assumption, not a reality. So let's trust the individual when they tell us it didn't work. What did you learn? What, right? Have some curiosity. You gotta build more grace into the system as you make this transformation. Otherwise, you are going to create burnout. If you're at the end of a sprint and you're retrospective and you're like, you said this was going to be 3 points. Why did it take you so long? You should have been able to do 2 or 3 tickets this sprint. And in fact, I think you could have done 5 tickets because you now have AI. Well, now I'm in a defense. If I'm the engineer, I'm in a defensive posture, explaining why I wasn't able to meet your expectations. So approaching it with more curiosity, having more grace, maybe even as a product manager, it's like, if the engineers are waffling between a 3 and a 5, it's like, well, make it a 5 and let's try the AI so that we create the space for us to learn something here and report back. You know, we really want to hear how it goes. That is a very different conversation than I expected you to do a lot more work, and I don't understand what's wrong with you. So that I think that's a really important tonal consideration in terms of how teams are operating through the transition. We got to create some grace and have some curiosity, and not just a mandate and, you know, crack the whip. That I've seen eventually the horse will buck, and that is what burnout and disengagement is.
Yeah, I do resonate with that, Scott, because while using not the AI in product development, but AI in the business, I could sense that it was actually slowing us down because we are also trying to be familiar with that AI tool before understanding how it can perform. And I can understand if I struggle with a business tool to do a very small work. Imagine that multifold on product development and how much impact it would have been there.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you very much, both of you. As usual, short of time, we have to close here. There are a couple of unanswered questions. Apologize again, but I think it's a great conversation. And to all the HR leaders who are on the call across the world, we do hear in other webinars also this question of impact of artificial intelligence on culture. And you know, Scott, Martin, we always used to talk about these questions with mostly either talent heads or the business leaders, but this is a very different way to look at it from people like you who are into AI transformations through Olo and working with different organizations. And looking at it from that lens is very, very important, because we always have our own perception of how that will work, but especially listening from experts who have been doing it for multiple organizations, it gives us a perspective. And I think there are a lot in my perspective that has changed today. And there could be a way that we could do it. Not an easy path, I would say, still, because I don't think many organizations are still doing it or has the courage to do the AI transformation. One is because of the cost, and I think because of the uncertainty on ROI and how that people will take, etc., etc. But the time is not that far, because now people are kind of understanding at the small level, maybe understanding the impact that AI can create. So why not to do it at the large level? So this particular conversation today is particularly very helpful for talent leaders on this call, because they are kind of preparing themselves for a thing that is supposed to come. And honestly speaking, if I would have time, I want to talk about the impact on people's psychology, because job displacement is not that easy to handle, and it comes with a lot of stress. But maybe for some other day. With that said, thank you very much. Any last word you have for talent and business leaders on this call from your side?
The one thing that I would offer, I mean, it was interesting just listening to you now, the thought that came into my head, so I'll just offer this up, is for the individuals out there that are trying to navigate this transformation. I mean, as Martin mentioned a little while ago, engaging with AI is good for your career. This is not going away. And we know that. And so while it is scary, you should embrace the opportunity to start gaining mastery with these tools. It will make you more valuable and more hireable. So even if you lose your job, you now have skill sets to offer in the market. I think that growth is always makes you more valuable. So I understand the fear, but you need courage. Is a great line that a mentor of mine mentioned to me was, courage is not the absence of fear, it's moving forward anyways. And so let's acknowledge the fear, but also continue working on your growth and impact, and you'll definitely do better. That tends to work out better, even if it doesn't in the current job you're in. So that's one thing I would offer.
Thank you. Martin, anything from your side for the audience?
I think Scott and I both covered this a lot, this idea of trust. One thing we've done with leaders is break up trust. And someone created this trust equation. There's several of them out there, but the one we use, which is helpful in framing this with leaders, because this moment of AI transformation and the pressure on this, there is a lot of trust. And so the equation we use is credibility. So do you actually know what you're talking about? are you reliable, and do you create safety? So that's at the top, and then at the bottom, it's divided by self-interest. So if you think about credibility plus the reliability you have as a leader plus the safety you create, and then divide it by your perceived self-interest. Now, these are hard numbers, but I think as HR leaders, as we think about this, it's nice to break down trust in a meaningful way so you can see where do we have work to do. And again, if employees perceive that we're just in our own self-interest, it kind of doesn't matter what you do with credibility, reliability, and safety. So I think it's a helpful framing to think about and talk about as we move through these moments. Do we actually have trust with our employees, our peers, and the leaders above us?
Thank you, Martin, and thank you, Scott, for such a great conversation. To our audience now, what I would say is that I think Scott said it pretty well at the individual level. I also believe that it's not a time for us to get afraid from AI, but just to navigate through it and learn it. And Martin, thank you very much for touching upon the leaders part of it. It's not only individual. I think is as a leader of the business, it's our responsibility as well to make sure that our people feel inclusive, feel trusted, and we help them to navigate through it. But at the same time, not to set the wrong expectation. I think one of the ethical considerations that Scott spoke about, targeting the job displacement, but not saying it up front and not doing things about it. So with that said, ladies and gentlemen, this is the end to our episode 19 on navigating the human side of artificial intelligence. We had Scott Varro and Martin Wilson with us, the founder and co-founder of Olo, who's helping organizations transform through artificial intelligence. Thank you, both of you, once again, and it was really a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you, Govind.
Thank you. Cheers.
Thank you. Bye.